Hi there. Do you ever feel like your family's just totally turned out not the way that you thought it would be, or that you have lost total control of what's happening in your home and don't know how to get that back, and just are frustrated and feeling like, oh my gosh, like this isn't even what I wanted? I'm going to talk about that today on this episode. Hi, welcome to the Parenting Bridge podcast. I'm Dr. Michelle Alden, a licensed professional counselor, parent coach, and family therapist. And I'm here to help you to build a bridge to your best family possible. So I just want to say that I have a lot of things on my mind, and I'm going to try to get these out in the best way possible for you to be able to hear, what some of these ideas are. And I also think that I want to say ahead of time that I know that most of the parents that come to me for help or could be listening to this episode, you may feel like you really, there's nothing you can do, and that things are the way they are, and that I'm not really understanding your situation. But I want to talk today about that feeling that you're having of that you can't do anything about it, that these things are just happening to you. And so it could be because maybe you've gone through divorce, and so you feel like, the kids are spending some of the time in your home and some of the time in other people's homes. And so there's this contention of like, that's not the way I want to do it at my house, but this is the way they do it at their house. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. Or it could just be, trauma that's happened. It could be, and I know in a lot of adopted situations that parents just weren't expecting maybe the level of difficulties that they're seeing in their kids and the behaviors and things like that. And so it's, you're taking the kids to counseling, and you're doing all of these things to try to help fix what's happening with your kid. It could be that you have a family full of, or maybe even just one child that's neurodivergent, and so you're really struggling. Like they're not typical. They're not, maybe you raised other kids and it was like, okay, but none of them has been as hard as this kid. All of that, like even with all of those things, I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I think you need to be able to wrap your head around, and it's going to look a little different for everybody in their situations. But I want to address some of those situations, just give you some ideas and give you some hope that it can be different than how it is. I think that a lot of times when things happen in our family, whether it's a very difficult, challenging child, or whether it's, a lot of difficult children, maybe it's your own difficulties, your own mental health issues, or divorce or things like that have disrupted your family, the death of a spouse, that you feel like you've lost control. That's the whole thing about trauma, right? Is that we feel like we've lost control, and that's what makes it traumatic, is that some things have happened that were beyond our control, even if we were the one that instigated that, right? Like that you wanted to adopt, or you needed to have the divorce happen or something. It still causes some trauma and some trauma responses in that. And a lot of it depends on what else you've already been through. So taking all of that into consideration, I still feel like it's really important to think about what it is that you want your family to be like. So whether it's, just been a year, or maybe it's been 6 months, or maybe it's been 5 years since all of these things started happening. We teach the kids in our program that we do with Healthy Foundations Family Program, and we talk about this a lot in the coaching that I do, that it's never too late to turn it around. And that's what I want to talk to you about today too, is that it is never too late to turn it around. That this is your house and your family, and what do you want? What do you need for this to be a safe place for you too? And a lot of times we're thinking about what the kids want, and then I think a lot of moms that I talk to especially feel just totally powerless, right? Like they feel like, well, I would like it this way, but my spouse wants it this way, or the kids have done this, and so the kids have destroyed things or broken things, and you would normally not live in a house like that. and yet you have these kids have these outrageous behaviors, and so you just feel it's just compounds, right? Like you're living in a place that is, I know, even just as a mom with typical kids, five kids, and later adopted my sixth child, I was always amazed, like how different it was living with this many people and the wear and tear on things and things like that. But I also felt like it was really important to teach them how to live in my house and how I wanted to be treated in my house. So I think that there's a big piece of that before you can do anything about it, you have to really wrap your head around that and really make some decisions about you as the parent and what you want it to be like. That does not mean that we can just go and change everybody and make them do that for us, but we have to at least have had that thought process. What am I allowing to happen, and how am I allowing people to treat me in my house or treat my house that is adding to all of this, right? So I've worked in some homes where people are really diligent. If something gets broken, it gets fixed and repaired. I've worked in a lot of families' homes where, because kids, kick the walls and break things, they have very limited things that they can have in their room. They may have hardwood up on the walls instead of normal sheetrock. I've been in homes where windows have been broken and had to be replaced, but then they've had to put things in front of the windows so that it doesn't continue to get broken because of the danger of that. And then I've been in other homes where people are living with all of that. They're living with the broken everything. And it may already be a lot if you're living in a home where you have to lock things up. You probably never thought when you started to have kids or you started your family that you were going to have to maybe lock your refrigerator, have locks on your cabinets, or locks on the garage, locks on the master bedroom. And all of that can be really, really devastating, but it's one of the ways that I feel like families kind of come around it. It's like, we don't want to live in a place that we're always dealing with the hoarding and the kids getting into things and breaking things. And so we are going to create it in a safe way. And so I feel like some families are able to kind of access that way of helping kind of come around it by putting things away, locking things up, those kind of things. And then other families, it's like they just kind of live with it, and it kind of becomes the way the family is, like just the way they're functioning. And so that's really up to you to decide how you're going to do that. I work with some parents that this is how they would be anyway. Like they would live that way. They wouldn't live any other way if they were just by themselves. They have things, and they're pilers, or they are not, they don't care about having things neat and tidy. And so that's for you to decide the level of comfort. I know I was working with a family one time, and they were talking about wanting the kids to have better manners at the table, wanting to be more polite. And so we did a unit on different manners and stuff like that. But in the end, the family decided that they really actually liked kind of the banter and more of the, it just being a little bit looser and more fun. And even if people were all talking at once and, it was a little bit loud and a little bit messy, that's how they felt like it was a better way to end their day and their family time together. That's totally fine. I think it's just you having that. I think a lot of it is just not getting stuck with these barriers of like, well, this is just how it is and I just have to deal with it. I want to really empower you that you get to decide how it's going to be, and how you set up the parameters of what you will allow in your home is how it will be. I know traveling around in my big old Suburban with my kids, and we lived an hour away from town, so we would sometimes spend an entire day basically in our car doing errands and the drive to and from, and we ate our food in the car and all of that kind of stuff. But it was just kind of a guideline in our family that every time we stopped to get gas, that we would clean out the car, like all the garbage, And it really didn't take that much time, and everybody was in on us. Like, everybody can hand you something and it can get thrown away. And then for me, like, I cared about having a car that was clean. So, you know, maybe once a week, probably less than that actually, maybe every couple of weeks, it depended on if it was muddy or not, we would go get the car washed, and the kids learned how to help like vacuum it out and things like that. That was important to me. I was raised that way, where my dad took care of our cars, so that's what we did. Otherwise, we could have really easily lived in a car that was full of junk and stuff like that. Now, was there still stuff that happened? Sure. I mean, I remember one time realizing that they had like that down in where the seat belts go in, that there was French fries shoved down there. And I was never going to get those out. And you know, unless the car like wrecked or something, and then you're going to see all this stuff like come out of the woodwork. But for the most part, like we had a routine and a pattern, and that's because that's how I wanted to have my car. I felt like I was a better driver when my car was not, you know, super messy. And that's just what we did. When we got to the house, everyone took their things out, and then in our house, everything had a place to go. I was a little more lenient on their rooms and what they wanted to do in their rooms, as long as it wasn't food. But then there were times when it was like, okay, we need to clean the rooms, we're going to have company, or you're going to have company, you know, and so we kind of did that together. But for the most part, like, that was just how they were raised, and that's just how they were taught. And it's, a lot of it was because that's the way, like, my house has been the same way whether I had kids or not had kids. That yes, there's more stuff and things get out, and it can be kind of crazy sometimes, especially now, like when my grandkids come and they play with everything, but they still have learned, like at Mimi's house, that's what they call me, we put things away. And so that's just how I am. But I just want to empower you as a parent to really think about how you want your house to be. The other thing I want you to think about is like when people leave, when kids are leaving, when they're coming home, how does your family greet people? How do they say goodbye? And what's the requirement there? I know with a lot of adoptive families, I've had to tell the parents that they have to teach their kids, like, in our house, we give each other a hug goodnight, and we say, I love you. And you're just teaching your kids, you're kind of scripting out for them how they can do it. They don't have to have a lot of emotion behind it if they're not there, especially with attachment disorders, but you're just saying you're setting the precedent of what is expected and what you want. And this is little things, I think, compared to like some of the big things that you're dealing with. So I'm just talking about you as a parent really wrapping your head around what you want. So let's talk a little bit about like when kids are going back and forth between mom and dad's house. I deal with this a lot. I work with a lot of single parents, and I work with a lot of parents that kids are going back and forth. And I want to empower you in that too, that you cannot control what's happening at the other parent's house. If you and that other parent are co-parenting and you're able to communicate and you can be on the same page everywhere that you can. But if you can't, if that's impossible, then you can really only do what you can do in your home. So I feel that it is very valuable that your kids know this is how it is at mom's house. And they may, on the other side of that, they know how it is at dad's house. But the amount of manipulation that goes back and forth when they can go to dad's house and say, well, mom lets us do, or mom doesn't, or mom did this, and they can, you know, either badmouth you or put that pressure there, or the same thing with, you know, well, dad let us do this. And I hear all the time from parents, well, you know, they were with their dad and he bought them this junk food, or, you know, whatever. But a lot of the problems that you're having are going to be very similar to the problems that this other parent is having. And especially with your neurodivergent kids, there's similar problems that are going back and forth. Everybody has a different way that they're going to deal with it, more than likely. And what I found in a lot of divorce situations is that a lot of times you have two parents that don't know how to deal with it, and so they're kind of blaming each other and pulling from that. You know, I was just talking to a parent recently where I was telling him, it seems like every time we start to make progress in like, this is what you're going to do here, it's like you jump over to what dad's doing at his house and you bring that in to this. And we can leave that there. Right now, while you're trying to establish what you want your family to look like, what you want it to be at your house, you can leave that aside. And I think a lot of people are really scared to do that because they want the kids to want to be at their house, right? Like, especially if you're pretty recent in the custody battles and things like that. It's like, oh, but I want the kids to want to be here, right? So I don't want to make it this certain way. But the stability and the more solid you can be, like, be the solid parent, be the solid object, especially if they're going back and forth. And ultimately, our goal is that they would be solid in both places, right? That's what's best for kids. But if they can't, then at least you're going to do everything that you can. If you cannot work with the other parent, if they're, so, I've told them this 100 times. It's like, okay, so why are we worrying about that? If the rule is that they don't come home with this, when we do the program, we don't have electronics. And so the kids will go over to the other parent's house and they might have electronics. But it doesn't change us as the adults. It's like, this is still the rule at our house. At our house, we're doing the family program. This is the rule. So either they are handing it to you at the door or they're leaving it at dad's, and you're setting up how you want it to be. If it's important to you that how people talk to each other in your home, then you're going to set that. Well, at dad's house, he says blah, 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 or he did this, or, dad lets us swear, or whatever it is. It's like, okay, but that's what dad said. My house, this is how I want it. Does it mean it's going to change it just because you said that? No. But this video is really about you wrapping your head around what you can do to make those changes. You get to decide, and you might have to write this down. I can decide how people are going to treat each other in my house. I can decide how we're going to do dinner. I can decide that in my family, we're going to sit at the table and we're going to, play a game every evening. I can decide, so you don't have to. I just think parents feel so much pressure, right? Like, you have to care about, what does the school think, and what do they want, and what does this other parent want, and what does the grandparents think, and what does your child think, and what does the child's friends think, and it's like, no, like, this is your house. And I think it's really important while your kids are at home to establish some of that. Your kids are going to come back to your house for years and years and years, much longer than 18 years, hopefully, as adults. And so how they're going to come back to your house, and you want them to have that familiar of like, oh, this is my mom's house. This is how it is at my mom's house. And maybe stuff that drives them crazy that's at their mom's house, but that's okay. It's your house. You get to decide. Don't wait. Don't think, well, when my kids are gone, then my house is going to be like this. Like, maybe there's some things that may change, but really, like, after years of living, however it is you're living, I don't know how much it will change for you, but you can do that now because you want your kids to be brought up with you as the parent being in charge, and for them to know, like, it's their home, but it's your house, and it's you as the adult get to set the tone for that. You get to see what, how you want it to be. And in looking at all of that, what I think happens, because parents are usually, I'm talking to them about this, they start throwing in all the barriers, right? Like, but what about this, and what when this happens, and what when that happens? But so think about those things. And think about, what is it you can change? Can you change the other parent's attitude about it? No. Can you change even if they're bad-mouthing you? No. Can you change, what your kids do when they're over there? No. Can you change, or can you force your kids, these different things? It's like, probably not. But you can start to create what you want. And a lot of it, probably 90% of it or more, starts with what you tell yourself about what you want that to be like. So that's what I have for you today. If you want more parent coaching, if you want something deeper, ongoing, then join us in the playroom. Every week we meet together with parents. You can subscribe on our website, parentingchallengingkids.com, and sign up for the playroom for parents. And we go over people's different situations. You don't have to have a situation to talk about. We just learn so much from each other, and you can watch as I coach other parents. If you want more than that, just look at our website and see the courses that we have. Get a copy of the book, Parenting Emotionally Disturbed Kids, and emotionally distressed kids, and just start your journey with learning some other tools and things that you can do as a parent. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for listening to The Parenting Bridge. Do you want to learn more about building a bridge to better behaviors? Pick up a copy of Dr. Michelle Alden's new book, Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids. Or, for more resources, you can click on the link for Healthy Foundations. If you would like to leave a comment or a question for Dr. Alden, there's a link in the notes. We'll see you next time, and remember, things can always get better.